Hello, I would like to welcome everyone to the webinar today, Galileo Innovations for Common Core Implementation, November 13th. Hosted by Assessment Technology Incorporated, presented by Jason Feld, Vice President of Corporate Projects, Karen Kawacki, Professional Development Director, with a special presentation by Christine Burnham, Senior Research Scientist on Psychometrics, facilitated by myself, Jody Jepson. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Jason Feld.
Thank you, Jody, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. On behalf of Christine and Karen and all of us at ATI, we want to thank you for joining us today. We have a lot to cover in a 45-minute period, so hopefully we'll get through it together. I do want to thank and recognize all our clients across the many states that are implementing Galileo, and to just let everybody know that we have participants as far away as Hawaii, as far away as Massachusetts, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Illinois, and of course our home state, Arizona. Thank you to everybody, and especially all our school districts and charter school clients who have helped us to move Galileo in the direction it's now headed, and your successes in its implementation. We're going to be sharing something new with you today. It'll be new in some sense, but it will also be something that has been built on the work we've been doing over the last several years. And that is what we're calling a Common Core Dialogic Curriculum and Assessment Model. And that model implemented within Vision-Based Planning. We'll be talking in detail about both of those, but the important thing to share with you is this particular innovation is designed to ensure that there is an intelligent integration between Common Core assessment, Common Core curriculum and instruction, and perhaps most importantly, the type of measurement and psychometrics that undergirds the system in terms of producing actionable data that can be used to inform educational decision making. So where I'd like to start is just to give you a brief definition of vision-based planning. You're probably familiar with it in one sense or another as you do strategic planning within a school district or charter school. But fundamentally, in our work, VBP is a shared vision about where a school district and charter school wants to go, and what it's going to do in terms of its locally designed Common Core initiative. It is a roadmap because it is intended to identify shared goals, have purposeful planning, proactive resource allocation, and most importantly, a systemic implementation. We have found that doing things piecemeal when we're trying to move forward with a major initiative in education must be systemic in order to work effectively. VBP also is designed to empower all the stakeholders in a school district or charter to really ask and answer the most fundamental question for Common Core implementation. And that question is, does this decision, whatever decision we're making, take us in the direction of the vision or not? In addition to that, it helps us to prioritize what decisions and actions need to occur in the short term, in the intermediate term, and most importantly, how those two decision-making processes connect with long-term success. And of course, it helps to minimize distractions that might appear important at the moment, but can actually take a school district or charter school further away from achieving its goals. The best example I can give in terms of the difference between vision-based implementation planning, or what I'd like to call reflex or reactive-based planning for Common Core, I think is identified quite well in the little cartoon below. With regard to vision-based planning, the next question we had to ask ourselves is, how are we going to move forward with this new model that we've developed within Galileo? During the past few years, we have been involved in some major research and development efforts related to Common Core assessment and instruction. And while many people out there are asking for item banks, I think you all know that item banks aligned to Common Core are not really Common Core. They're a piece of Common Core, but Common Core is about instruction, curriculum, and assessment blended together intelligently so that we are empowering students as learners and teachers as educators. So a major outcome of our work has actually been to develop what we're calling a Galileo Common Core Dialogic Curriculum and Assessment Model. And that model is implemented as part of a school district or charter school's vision-based planning. The first step we had to take in terms of building out this model is to kind of find out what's going on out there. And over the past several months, we implemented a technology readiness survey to try to get a handle on where school districts and charter schools were at in their vision-based planning and where they're headed. I'm going to show you some of the results of that, but again, I thought these little cartoons here, more than words, and you know the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words, really articulate what's going on out there and kind of where we're headed as well as the challenges. And I hope you enjoy those cartoons. We're going to go ahead and jump over to the technology survey that we did over the past few months. It's an initial survey, and we will continue to build more data on this, but I wanted to share some of the initial results with you. One of the first questions we needed to address with school districts and charter schools across the many states is, are they actually ready to support online assessment as planned for by the two consortia? And as you can see, you know, the map there is pretty much spread all over the place. And school districts and charters are at different points in their vision-based planning for that. That becomes important, obviously, because a lot of the work that's going to be done at the local level related to instruction, curriculum, and assessment is going to be dependent in some way, shape, or form on having good technology that makes that work. The next question we asked had to do with their time frame for actually expanding their technology to support Common Core. And as you can see, about half of the districts and charter schools we surveyed have not quite yet set a timeline, but others are kind of setting timelines within the next few years. The third thing we asked, because this was a burning question out there in the field, has to do with the extent to which school districts and charters are ready to implement performance-based assessment. And of course, we're going to talk about technology-enhanced items as well. But again, as you can see, there's a spread of interest across school districts and charters, but a good portion of them are, in fact, really planning in the fall of 2014-15 to implement performance-based assessments on their formative and benchmark assessments. Related to that, we wanted to talk to districts about their readiness in terms of professional development for their staff, both to reliably score performance-based assessments and how to construct good credible scoring rules. And what we found, of course, is that there is a wide and a broad need for training, professional development related to that. While it is true that on statewide assessments, some items will be scored outside of the school district, in particular performance-based constructed response items within the school district and throughout the year. We're hearing that staff really want to become knowledgeable about doing it themselves so they really can understand what's going on with the student. The next two questions we asked had to do with the curriculum side of Common Core, and what we did find out, of course, is that many, and certainly close to half, there's a high interest in building out or revising curricula to accommodate a Common Core. And for those of you that are looking at CCSS there, which is Common Core State Standards, since Arizona is our home state, we do refer to that here as college and career ready standards. So that's why you're kind of seeing these two acronyms up there. Then the last question we dealt with had to do with the interest in technology to support the construction of curriculum related to Common Core. And again, we see that there's a tremendous interest in the use of technology to support that. So it made a lot of sense to us that as we were building out the technology to support Common Core going forward, we did not want to deal with assessment in a separate silo, but what we really wanted to do was to create an environment within Galileo that had fidelity to Common Core, which is a natural blending of assessment and instruction within the classroom. So we're going to continue to collect data on that, but I thought it would be helpful to share that with you at this point in time so you can kind of see what's going out there. I'm assuming that you will be able to relate pretty well with that. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to Keratin, who's our Director of Professional Development and Training, and she's going to talk to us a bit about the kinds of assessment item types that we are building into this new model for school districts to use within Galileo, and we're going to give you a flavor of that. And once we're finished with that, we will move over to a detailed discussion about what that model looks like within Galileo so that you can see a view of the prototype that's actually now starting to be implemented. Keratin, I turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to demonstrate to you some of the items we've developed to meet districts' needs for the new assessment and instructional approach Dr. Feld was just speaking about. You may find a white paper which tells about the design, the review, the construction of the procedures ATI used when developing these items on our website, and we attached it here so that you could see that. Now let us examine some of the types of items that ATI is ready to provide clients. To demonstrate these, I'm going to log in as a student and take a test. And as we're logging in as a student, I'm going to remind you that we've always offered selected response and constructed response items. And what we're excited to show you today are some of our innovative item types. You'll notice that we're logging in as a student. We're brought to the student parent portal, and then we're going to go ahead and click to take a test. We select the assessment that we're going to take, and then we're click on Take Test, and we're brought to our first test question. Question 1 of our test is an example of an ATI constructed response question, which many of you are familiar with. New to districts, though, are our technology enhanced items. These include sequencing items, such as question 2. The student is asked to place things into a logical or procedural order, demonstrating an understanding of cause and effect, and also demonstrating steps in a process. Now we're going to navigate over to question 3. This shows another technology enhanced item. This is our interactive text, where a student is asked to highlight a requested element. And in this case, they're being asked to highlight where the commas should be placed. Now we're going to skip over to question 7. You're going to see one of our new items called item collections. Here, this is a single item, which is actually made up of multiple items that are related to one another. Now, we're going to go ahead and close out of the assessment. And I'm going to show you some other types of items that we have in our model content. You'll find technology-enhanced items not just in assessments, but you'll also find them embedded in other components of ATI's model content. For example, in this item, students are asked to place planets in their correct positions during an astronomy lesson. You'll notice that they can check in and then get immediate feedback to help guide them in the learning process. Also notice on the right-hand side of this slide, we are linked to another item. This is a drag and drop item where students are asked to demonstrate their understanding of the food chain. And again, they can continually check in and receive feedback while interacting with the lesson. And one more that I'd like to show you is on our next slide, slide 9. This is an example where students encounter an interactive model that helps them conceptualize the relationship between temperature and kinetic energy particles in matter. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Feld, who's going to show you some more technology-enhanced items and discuss with you the implementation of the dialogic model.
Thank you, Keratin. As we indicated earlier, our focus in linking vision-based planning with this new Common Core dialogic curriculum is to ensure that assessment and instruction occur together naturally in the classroom as opposed to being separate entities. And again, that serves to ensure that implementation has strong fidelity to Common Core. Having said that, I'd like to show you a few more examples of the kinds of Common Core interactive item types and curriculum types that we are building into the system for districts, and then from there we'll go over to a prototype of the model that is currently being implemented. Those of you that are currently using Galileo, a few of these might be familiar, but some of them might be new. This is an example on the instructional side of the model where we're making it possible for students to actually drill down and get deeper levels of knowledge as it relates, and in this example, to science. Now, the thing I do want to point out here is that in addition to building out Common Core for English language arts, writing, and math, we are also building out the model for the new science standards as well. So that's why you're seeing some science threaded in this particular webinar. The next example I'd like to show you, and again, I like to draw from science because I think it's fun, but again, these are going to be operational for the various content areas, and this has to do with weather. And again, what we're doing here is going from information related to a depth of knowledge level 1, where basically descriptive information is being provided, to more detailed types of activities for the students, where we're really getting into DOK3 and DOK4, where they're getting into higher order thinking, but we're also wanting to ensure that part of the assessment provides instructional feedback to the students as well. So that's a second example. A third one I'd like to share with you, and I don't know if the audio is going to come through for you today. If it does, great. If not, I'm just going to run this for a few minutes. This is what we're building out as well.
These traits are passed on through your parents' gametes, which are created during meiosis. Meiosis consists of 2 cell divisions, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Meiosis begins with prophase 1. During prophase 1, the nuclear envelope encloses the chromosomes, each consisting of 2 chromatids. The centrioles move to opposite ends of the cell. Then, spindle fibers form as the nuclear envelope breaks down. Homologous chromosomes form pairs. This is when crossing over occurs and genetic information is exchanged.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here. I think you've got a flavor for it. If in fact you would like to see more of these, we're just showing a few today in terms of the interactive curriculum and assessment. Just give me a holler. I think you'll be getting my email address, phone number at the end of this a webinar, and we're happy to share this with you. There's one more here, but I want to move on to the actual model, but this will be posted on our website, so you'll be able to look at it. So at this point, what I'd like to do now is bring together vision-based implementation planning, which, as I said earlier, where while we are interested on what needs to be done now, we're more interested on what is done now and how it impacts sustainability of Common Core implementation in school districts and charter schools over the years to come. So we're going to continually evolve this system so that it keeps pace, and in some cases might be a little bit ahead of the game, but we kind of like to be in that position. So to kind of walk you through the model now, the preparations are now underway for the initial dissemination of what we're calling the Galileo Common Core dialogic curriculum and assessment model, because it is interactive, it is dialogic, it is communication between students and teachers and leaders and teachers and each other. And that is underway for dissemination in the spring of 2014. I want to show you an example of a component of that model that is delivered through instructional units within the model and walk you through some pieces of it. This is an example of an interdisciplinary unit within the model, and the key thing to point out here is that it is interdisciplinary. What we are doing is, where it makes sense, link English language arts and math and science standards together so that there is a broader representation of these standards within instruction and within assessment, and that we can truly not only get to deeper levels of knowledge, but knowledge that cuts across and is used across multiple disciplines. So in this instance, we have the primary goal of the dialogue within the model, which is really to understand rainfall. And of course, if you live in Arizona, you understand that a couple of times during the year. If you live in New York, where I grew up, you understand it occurring all the time during the year. Both have their benefits. You'll notice that within this, we also make it possible for the school district to link the goals for the dialogue directly to, and I'm going to open this up for you all now, directly to the standards that are going to be covered within that dialogue. And here, and this is one for Arizona, I'm going to pull up another one for Colorado in a short while. Here you'll see how this unit is in fact linking science standards and math standards and ELA standards together within that instructional unit. The dialogue continues with information for the teacher. So basically the teacher has a digital textbook. And by the way, these are dynamic, they're not static. So not only are we going to be building them out, but we're going to be providing professional development so that school districts and charters can actually build out their digital curriculum and their assessments aligned with Common Core and the science standards. But you can see it is in fact an online book, if you will, and it has sections in it as well as time allotted. We then start to build in the instructional content for the student in terms of what will be learned. In this model unit, we already embed activities for the student, so that we're giving the student experience in not only Common Core instruction, but assessment. And as you can see, we link this unit to other resources. Now, teachers can pull in their own resources. They can pull in the dialogues within Galileo, and as we'll see in a little while, can go directly out to the internet to also get information. This particular type of an activity will cover the full range of basically DOK1 all the way up through DOK4. So we're putting in place instruction and assessment that is truly not only interdisciplinary, but also intelligently integrated. So I'm going to go ahead and close that one out for you and go back to the main dialogue that I'm operating in. That model will be supported by all the teams here at ATI. As those of you we work with know, we like to bring the full organization to the table and partnering with school districts, and so we'll be doing that here. Fundamentally, what you can do with this new model is in fact to construct and bulk schedule across the district dialogue units that will include scope and sequence, and that will integrate assessment and instruction, both online and offline. Remember, we had to be sensitive to this based on the technology survey that we have out there and the information that is coming in here from not only our current school districts and charter partners, but also those that are talking to us, or really, quite frankly, as a resource to ask us questions about Common Core, to ask us questions about measurement and things related to SBAC and to POC. In any event, there will be a number of things that you can in fact do with this new technology. You'll be able to introduce new technology-enhanced items and performance-based assessment items within the classroom, and that will provide a safe instructional environment so that teachers and students can become familiar with this. This is going to be a transition over a few years, and as we said earlier, decision making that occurs to address the immediate distraction or immediate need may or may not be either economically or educationally effective in the long term. And what we're doing here is building out a system that can be used systemically that will in fact be sustainable over the long term. Where I want to go here now is to actually go to something that what I like to call in action. I'd like to thank our partners in Colorado at Harrison School District. Hopefully they've joined us today, and I want to give you an example of the wonderful work that Harrison is doing and actually starting to use this dialogic technology, and they've been tremendously helpful as a resource as they've rolled this out and they've started to get feedback. But right now we're in a teacher's dashboard. This is one of the dashboards that teachers see where they can do all their work. Where I want to focus you is right here in terms of the units, and I'm going to go over to a unit that is called area and perimeter. When I open that up, you're going to see how the model actually works. Within this unit, there is an assigned date. There is a date due for projects within the unit, and there's an availability of when that unit will be ready. You can see that the Common Core standards of interest within this unit have been identified by the district. The concepts within those have been identified, as well as the performance objectives. In addition to that, the district has put in a description of this unit called Enduring Understanding. It's added essential questions, key knowledge, key skills, and since we are concerned about Common Core not only for the student but also for the educator, within this unit they have embedded teacher resources as well as instructional resources for the student. These can be accessed both within Galileo, but as I pointed out earlier, there are no limits here, no boundaries. You can bring in stuff that was already created prior to implementing this model within your district. You can go out to the internet, in the case that's what's happening here, to grab resources for both students and teachers. And in addition to that, as you saw from the example I gave you on rainfall, the district can pull in all those dialogues that relate to Common Core instruction and assessment and make them part of the unit. The nice thing about this particular model is that, I believe it is probably, if not among the first model that has actually intelligently integrated curriculum instruction and assessment as really a part of the teaching process in alignment with Common Core. We will continue to refine this as it's rolled out this spring, and we get feedback from everybody, as those that work with us already know. We are very responsive to not only legislation but also to changes in technology, changes in research, changes in education, and most importantly, the input that we get from the charter schools and school districts that are implementing Galileo to address Common Core standards. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out for you all and jump quickly to give you our vision-based planning for this coming year and for 2014-15, because we are at this point already thinking ahead in terms of supporting the transition over to Common Core. So much work needs to be done on our end in order to have stuff ready for school districts and charters. So basically, we are, as you heard from Carradine, developing Common Core assessments and instructional units for this model. We'll be doing that for grades 3 through 10 in math and English language arts, and implementation can begin in stages beginning this spring of 2014. The second bullet really describes what is in each of the model units. We're going to try to give it a jump start for everybody, and so what we're going to do is actually develop a series of unit plans for school districts and charter schools to use align with Common Core. They will be comprised of dialogues and dialogue templates so that you can actually start to learn how to build these yourself and take ownership of your curriculum over time. Each unit that we build out for districts will contain dialogues, and those dialogues will contain several items that are technology enhanced. and aligned to the Common Core standards. And we will continue to build out that model and give districts and charters plans to use and to try out throughout the summer of 2014. As you saw earlier from Carradine, we are building out several different item types, and we will continue to build those out as well. And we are working on the ability to grade student work directly within a dialogue in real time. And again, keep in mind what we're doing here is blending instruction and assessment so that teachers have a new tool in their toolbox to support school districts and charter school implementation in Common Core. In terms of looking forward a bit for 2014 and 15, we are now starting to engage in vision-based planning with districts and charter schools, and we're going to do that extensively in the spring of 2013-14 so that we can help get them ready for implementation of technology-enhanced assessments, as well as these this new model for 14-15. One of the questions that have come in is, will you be putting this stuff on the benchmark assessments? And the answer to that is yes. But what we want to do is plan those benchmarks in a way so that they accommodate the technology readiness of school districts and charters, which is why we talked about that earlier. We will continue to expand the model, and we will, of course, continue to provide professional development and all the supportive services so that we can be a part of and help facilitate a transition over to Common Core. Having said that, I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Christine Burnham, Dr. Burnham. Christine is our senior research scientist. And what I just want to share with you real quickly is what Christine's going to share with you will sound complex, just like science. Well, in fact, it is science. It is measurement. It's, we believe, if not the most important, one of the most important parts of implementing Common Core instruction and assessment, because underneath it all, you have to have reliable data to guide decision making. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine.
Thank you, Jason. So the model that we've been discussing emphasizes the integration of assessment and instruction. And the reason that I'm discussing psychometrics now is because the tools that we use to make those connections are based on item response theory and other methods that we use for data analysis. So let me just give you a brief overview of what item response theory is and what it gains, and then how we are adapting this to accommodate the Common Core. We've been doing much of this work for some time, and we just need to, we've just been building it out to accommodate the new technologies that are out there. So for those of you who are or are not familiar with IRT, let me just give you a quick overview. The idea is that student ability is evaluated alongside an evaluation of the items on an assessment, so that student ability and things like item difficulty are on a common scale. What that buys us over just raw scores is something called mastery probability. And that's the crucial link between assessment and instruction. So what I'm showing at the bottom here, the graph there, is a item characteristic curve that you get from item response theory. It's the data associated, or the model associated with one particular item. Each item on an assessment would have a similar curve. What's plotted along the horizontal axis is student ability. And what's plotted on the vertical axis is the probability that students will respond correctly to the item. Now this item is a selected response item, like multiple choice item, so that it's either the student gets it correct or incorrect. So you follow the curve, and you can see that students of higher ability have a greater likelihood of answering correctly. Once we have this information in the system, we can use it to take a student's ability level and then get an idea of what content the student is ready to tackle next. So if you follow the line across back to the probability for answering correctly, you can tell for any given level of ability sort of what the sweet spot is for the next content for instruction. And that's what we use in Galileo to guide teachers to next steps. We've been doing that for some time, and it's been working very well. We just need to be able to expand on that to accommodate the Common Core. So one thing that's emphasized more with the Common Core, it's not necessarily new, is the use of constructed response items. Now with constructed response items, there's often a scoring rubric. There's often more than one possible point value, so it's a graded response model. It's not just right or wrong. A student might get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 points, something like that. Fortunately, there are models out there that can apply IRT techniques to such items. One of them is the Samajima graded response model, and that's what we've been using. And it evaluates the points awarded to students in a similar way to multiple choice. So the graph that's plotted below is an item characteristic curve for a constructed response item. This one happens to be worth 4 points. And there's a separate curve for each possible point value. So you can see that first curve that comes down from the left, that's the probability of getting the answer correct, or getting a 0 points on the item. So you can see that as student ability increases, the likelihood of being awarded 0 points on the item decreases. And then each of those curves represents the probability of being awarded each incremental point value based on ability. So it's a very similar idea to the selected response item that we had earlier, and we can use this method the same way, or this information the same way as we can for selected response items to guide teachers to the next steps and suggest content for further instruction. Another issue that comes up with trying to estimate student ability, and again, getting precise estimates of student ability is what we use to guide teachers to the next steps of an instruction, is trying to pull out ability from all the other noise. So we're always trying to measure student ability, but student ability is not something we can see directly. All we can see is how the student performed on an assessment. And we have all known for some time that there are many factors that can influence how a student responds to an assessment. Ability is one of them. The item characteristics that I discussed briefly on the previous couple of slides are others, and those are handled by IRT, things like item difficulty and so on. But with the Common Core, one thing that's coming in, of course, is the introduction of technology-enhanced items. And that likely introduces a whole new set of variants that will influence student performance on assessments. So in order for us to be able to identify student abilities as precisely as possible, we need to identify the associated variants from technology-enhanced items, pull that apart from the model, and get to the student ability estimates. So things like technology experience. So fortunately, there are methods out there to get to such things. One of them is multidimensional analysis. We have been using that for other purposes for some time. With the advent of technology-enhanced items, we are gathering student responses to such items. And as we gather data, we can apply the multidimensional analysis techniques, looking at how students perform on technology-enhanced items relative to multiple choice items and so on, and use that information to sort of pull apart that noise in the system and get to more accurate student ability estimates to guide further instruction. So another source of variance in trying to get to student ability is test length, believe it or not, because test length is associated with test reliability, and reliability is associated with the accuracy with which, or the precision with which, we can get to student ability estimates. So as a very loose analogy, that picture down there, that's Jack, who appeared in our backyard a couple of years ago. You can think of the items on an assessment as pixels in a photograph. If you have a very short assessment, you're not going to get a very precise picture of student ability. As you increase the length of the assessment, you have a greater number of items on the assessment, the picture just becomes clearer as you see there. So classroom quizzes tend to be 5, 10 items in length, something like that. We don't usually even measure reliability on that. To start getting into realms where we're comfortable with the precision of measurement, you want to have something more along the lines of 35 to 50 items. That's what we recommend to our clients when they're building benchmark assessments and interim assessments and so on. And we typically end up with reliability estimates on the order of 0.8, 0.9, which is quite good. Statewide assessments tend to be longer still, because this concept has been known for some time. So for example, I looked at the technical manual for the Arizona statewide assessment. From 2012, the range tended to be from 54 to 85 items, and their reliability estimates tend to be about 0.92. So the longer the test, the greater the precision. Now, it would be wonderful if teachers in the classroom could get the same precision, but of course it's just not practical for teachers to be administering 85-item assessments on a regular basis, so we have a plan for that. And that's where cumulative assessment technology comes in. We're very excited about this. The idea is that we can provide teachers with that measurement precision by combining student responses from a series of assessments. They can be interim assessments, they can be classroom quizzes. We just keep combining the data so that it becomes basically one big test. So here's an example of one that we've been doing this work for some time. Here's an example of one that we looked at from last year. The content happened to be third grade ELA that was administered in Arizona in the 2012-13 year. We selected 1,000 items from the data set. Now this was assessments that were administered across districts, across charter schools. We selected 1,000 items from that set. There were well over 74,000 students that contributed to that data set. So essentially you have a data matrix that's 1,000 items by 74,000 students wide, basically. That gives us great precision. Now, for any individual student, of course, they're not seeing 1,000 items, but they are seeing something on the order of 133 items. That was the average in this particular data set. And that generates pretty good reliability. In this data set, the overall reliability was 0.98. And so by virtue of pulling together data from all these different little sources, we can give the teachers good precision in student ability estimates to guide instruction and still leave time in the classroom to actually implement the instruction rather than focusing it all on assessment. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jason now.
Thanks, Christine. We have received quite a few questions coming in throughout the webinar. We're going to answer all of them for you. We will actually be putting the answers up online, but there were 4 consistent questions that came in that I'd like to briefly respond to, so you have that information in hand. The first question that came in is as follows. Is ATI developing selected response items, constructed response items, including performance-based items and technology-enhanced items? It's a long question. Aligned with Common Core and reflective of the item types being developed by POC and SBAC? The answer to that is yes. We've already developed over 48,000 items in math and English language arts that are aligned to the Common Core. Most of these are selected response questions, but we wanted to address those first because we wanted to ensure that we can accommodate offline assessments in as many districts and charter schools as possible based on the technology survey. So as you all know, in order to implement technology enhanced items, particularly on benchmarks, the student has to be online. So we focused on that first to help districts in the transition. The selected response item bank, there are currently several thousand constructed response items in the constructed response bank, including performance-based items. And as I mentioned earlier, since we're focused on the new science standards, we've already put in several thousand science items that are reflecting science. The initial rollout of the online assessments, including the new technology enhanced items, as I discussed earlier, will occur through the new model, and then we'll be working with districts to embed them in benchmark assessments beginning 14, 15. But we do want people to have practice with it first. The next question that came in is, do we plan to offer training in the implementation of Common Core instruction and assessment, or that's reflective of both POC and SBAC? The answer to that, of course, is yes. And as part of the VisionBased Planning initiative, we will be providing training on the implementation of dialogic technology that you saw today, and we'll work with districts and charters to support the way in which they're going to implement that. I got time for one more, and that one is, do we plan to develop formative technology enhanced items for the formative item banks within Galileo? The answer to that is also yes. We recognize that formative items play a critical role in the integration of assessment and instruction, which is inherent in the Common Core initiative. So obviously through the new model and the formative banks, we'll be working on that as well. I'm going to stop at this point and turn it over to Jody because I know she's got a bunch of stuff she wants to share with you. But again, as I said earlier, we want to thank you so much for those of you that are working with us, for participating today, and those of you that are learning, we thank you as well. Please call me or email me, contact ATI. We have a ton of resources we'd like to share with you, and would like to learn more about what you're doing and share with you what we're doing. With that, I'll turn it over to Jody.
Thank you, Dr. Feld. I appreciate that. This concludes our webinar today. A recording of the webinar will be on our website, as well as a link posted on our Facebook account. We will be sending you a link to the webinar directly as well. We do appreciate your comments and questions throughout the presentations today. I know we weren't able to get to all of them, but we will be sending out an email describing all of the questions and all of the answers in a few days. The next steps, we wanted to extend an invitation to an Arizona complimentary seminar that's going to be held on December 3rd. This seminar will be focusing on building a successful local educator effectiveness initiative with technology and research. The seminar is going to be hosted by Creighton School District and ourselves, ATI. Watch our website and our Facebook account for more webinars that we are going to be planning in the spring on Common Core and educator effectiveness. Again, I really do appreciate your logging in today and your interest. Thank you.